Hello friends, welcome to Historical Pulse on this channel. You will see the video about the world top in history on this channel. Your knowledge will be increase and your mind will be refresh. Let's view the video. The rise of America as a superpower, from colonies to independence, 1776-1865. The story of America's rise to global dominance begins with its humble beginnings. 13 colonies along the Atlantic coast of North America. These colonies, founded mainly by British settlers, were originally small and struggling communities, dependent on agriculture and trade. However, over time, a distinct American identity began to emerge, one rooted in liberty, self-determination, and opportunity. By the mid-18th century, tensions with Great Britain grew stronger. Colonists were frustrated by high taxes, lack of representation in Parliament, and restrictive trade policies. The famous slogan, "No taxation without representation," captured their anger. When the British imposed the Stamp Act and Tea Act, protests spread rapidly, culminating in the Boston Tea Party in 1773. This defiance led to harsh British responses, and soon, the spark of revolution was lit. In 1776, the American colonies took a bold step by declaring independence. The Declaration of Independence, penned primarily by Thomas Jefferson, announced to the world that all men are created equal and endowed with unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This document wasn't just a break from Britain. It was a radical statement of human freedom that inspired revolutions worldwide. The Revolutionary War, 1775-1783, was long and brutal. The colonists faced the world's most powerful empire, but fought with determination under leaders like George Washington. With the help of France, America achieved victory in 1783, officially gaining independence through the Treaty of Paris. But independence brought new challenges. The new nation struggled to form a stable government. The Articles of Confederation proved too weak, leading to the drafting of the U.S. Constitution in 1787, a remarkable document that balanced power between states and the federal government while guaranteeing citizens' rights. As the 19th century unfolded, America expanded westward, driven by the idea of manifest destiny, the belief that it was destined to spread across the continent. This expansion, however, came at a terrible cost for Native Americans, whose lands were taken and cultures destroyed. Meanwhile, the nation became divided over the issue of slavery. The southern states depended on enslaved labor, while the northern states moved toward industrialization and abolition. These tensions exploded into the Civil War in 1861. For 4 long years, the Union and the Confederacy fought a bloody conflict that would determine the nation's future. When the war ended in 1865, slavery was abolished and the Union was preserved. America emerged from the ashes of Civil War more unified, industrialized, and ready to grow. The stage was now set for its transformation into a modern power, the Age of Industry and Innovation, 1865-1914. After the Civil War, the United States entered a period of explosive growth. The late 19th century, often called the Gilded Age, marked the rise of modern industry, technology, and urbanization. America was becoming a land of opportunity and ambition. Railroads connected the East Coast to the West, revolutionizing trade and transport. New towns sprouted, goods flowed freely, and people moved with greater ease than ever before. The discovery of natural resources like coal, oil, and iron fueled this expansion, while factories produced everything from textiles to machinery. This was also the age of great industrial giants, men like Andrew Carnegie in steel, John D. Rockefeller in oil, and J.P. Morgan in banking. They built massive business empires, creating both prosperity and inequality. The rise of monopolies and harsh labor conditions led to the growth of labor unions and the first organized strikes. Meanwhile, innovation flourished. Inventors such as Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, and Nikola Tesla changed daily life forever. The light bulb, telephone, and electricity brought America into a new era. These advancements didn't just make life easier. They symbolized the nation's spirit of invention and progress. Cities grew rapidly as immigrants poured in from Europe and Asia, seeking new lives. Between 1880 and 1910, millions arrived at Ellis Island, bringing skills, cultures, and dreams. America became known as the melting pot, a place where anyone could rise through hard work. The U.S. government also played a major role in expansion. Territories in the West were developed, Native Americans were pushed onto reservations, and Alaska was purchased from Russia in 1867. By the turn of the century, America had also begun looking overseas. The Spanish-American War of 1898 marked its first major step into international power, giving it control of territories like the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Guam. By 1914, the U.S. was no longer just a growing nation, it was an industrial giant, second only to Britain in global production. The foundations of an empire were laid. World Wars and Global Emergence, 1914-1945. The early 20th century was defined by global conflict, and through it, America's rise to world leadership accelerated. When World War I broke out in 1914, the United States initially stayed neutral. But as the war dragged on, German submarine attacks and the infamous Zimmermann telegram drew America into the conflict in 1917. The entry of American troops tipped the balance in favor of the Allies. When the war ended in 1918, the U.S. emerged as a key global player. President Woodrow Wilson's call for peace through the League of Nations marked America's first attempt to shape international order. However, the 1920s brought economic prosperity and cultural change. Jazz, movies, and mass production transformed daily life. But the 1929 Wall Street crash shattered that optimism, plunging the world into the Great Depression. During this time, new global tensions were brewing. In Europe, Adolf Hitler rose to power in Germany. In Asia, Japan began its expansion. When World War II erupted in 1939, the U.S. once again tried to stay out. But the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 changed everything. America mobilized on an unprecedented scale. Its factories turned into war machines, producing weapons, planes, and ships. Millions joined the military, and women took industrial jobs for the first time in large numbers. The U.S. became the arsenal of democracy. By 1945, America had helped defeat both Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. The use of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki demonstrated America's unmatched technological power, but also unleashed a new era of global fear. When the war ended, Europe and Asia lay in ruins, but the United States stood tall, economically strong, militarily dominant, and morally influential. The age of American superpower had truly begun. The Cold War era and global leadership, 1945-1991. The end of World War II didn't bring peace, it brought rivalry. The United States and the Soviet Union emerged as two opposing superpowers, each promoting different ideologies, democracy and capitalism versus communism. This ideological battle, known as the Cold War, shaped world affairs for nearly half a century. The U.S. led efforts to rebuild Europe through the Marshall Plan, helping nations recover from the devastation of war. It also established NATO to defend against Soviet influence. The 1950s and 60s were marked by tension, espionage, and an arms race. Both superpowers built massive nuclear arsenals, capable of destroying the world many times over. The fear of nuclear war loomed large during crises like the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. At the same time, the U.S. competed with the Soviets in science and space. The launch of Sputnik by the USSR shocked America, but it responded with the Apollo program, culminating in the 1969 moon landing, a moment that symbolized technological and ideological victory. Domestically, America underwent profound change. The civil rights movement, led by figures like Martin Luther King Jr., pushed the country closer to its ideals of equality and justice. Despite challenges like the Vietnam War, political scandals, and economic shifts, America continued to lead globally through its economy, culture, and innovation. By the 1980s, under President Ronald Reagan, the U.S. adopted a stronger stance against the Soviet Union. The arms race intensified but ultimately drained Soviet resources. When the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, it marked the symbolic end of communist power in Europe. 2 years later, the Soviet Union collapsed entirely. The United States stood alone as the world's only superpower, victorious, wealthy, and influential across the globe. The modern superpower, challenges and influence, 1991-present. With the fall of the Soviet Union, the world entered a new era, one dominated by the United States. The 1990s were a decade of confidence and innovation. America led the digital revolution, pioneered the internet age, and drove globalization through its economy and culture. Hollywood, technology, and democracy became symbols of American power. However, new challenges emerged. The terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001 changed the nation's course dramatically. The U.S. launched wars in Afghanistan and Iraq to combat terrorism and maintain global security. But these conflicts also sparked debate about America's role in the world. Economically, the U.S. remained strong, but globalization brought competition, especially from China, which began rising as a powerful economic rival. Still, America retained leadership in technology, education, and innovation through companies like Apple, Google, and Microsoft. Culturally, the influence of American music, movies, and social media shaped generations worldwide. Its universities attracted talent from every corner of the planet, while the US dollar remained the foundation of global finance. Yet, internal challenges also grew. Political polarization, social inequality, and debates over